Okay, so what we're talking about today is the accountability gap. Accountability comes up again and again and again with the people we work with, so that we thought it would be a great topic to talk about. And clearly, because we've got a lot of people online, it is something that's true to every leader's heart. So we will run through this. It will take us roughly, we always say roughly because we like to talk, around half an hour to go through the content, and then we will ask for questions. So if you have any that come up, have a think about it or add them into the chat as we go, and we can address them at the end.
So, to kick things off,
Quick introduction to us. You want me to? Oh,
okay.
it does come up first. That's me. So I'm Anna Saunders. I have a background as a tech executive. I worked in a lot of different businesses for over 20 years, both in here in Australia, UK, Japan, USA, and Hong Kong. The last three big roles I did was at Optus regional manager. I wasn't there for too long, but I did meet Craig there. So important role. I was an associate director at Macquarie and travelled all over the globe when they bought businesses, which they did a lot. It was mostly in the GFC, and I was tasked with running the programs to integrate the businesses back into head office. And then I went to work for NBN in their startup years. So that was a little crazy, but a great opportunity to understand how to build a business at scale.
A little bit about me. I spent 25 years in corporate myself, working on, as a senior manager, big projects, big programs. And 15 years of that, I was a consultant working for myself. So I worked with and for 40 or 50 major businesses. And in that time, I learned a hell of a lot about what makes great leaders, what works and what doesn't work from a leadership perspective. Um, and as Anna said, we actually met at Optus, so that's a good news story out of Optus. Um, Around 2014, Anna and I started Leadership Creativity, and that was all about using our experience and skills around leadership and building great teams to help other people because we'd seen so many people get into leadership or start their own business and really struggle with the leadership component, building high performing teams and developing strategies for their businesses. So we took it upon ourselves to help others. And you can see on the screen now, we've worked with a wide variety of businesses
Oh,
across a wide
hey,
variety of
are
industries.
you free? Oh, I'll come in. Thanks.
So it's it's been a wonderful journey to get to this point in our life of leadership creativity. We've worked with a lot of small businesses right through to corporate and government. And we love what we do. And so we're glad to see everyone here today. And we'll talk today about accountability.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of the presentation. So, what is accountability all about? So, what are some of the things that we look for when we talk about accountability? What is it that we're talking about?
So it's about taking responsibility, making sure that we do the things that we say we're going to do, and being responsible for not only as leaders, being responsible not only for ourselves, but for those the things that our team are doing as well. And not just farming stuff off, but making sure we look after our team, look after the things we're doing, and we look after the things that our team are doing and give them the support they need.
When we think about taking responsibility, a good way to kind of think about, well, what does that look like? Is we've all had meetings either one-on-one with people or as a group where we have a great conversation and everybody nods and we build a plan or we come up with an idea, and you walk away from that thinking that was great, something awesome's about to happen. And then you find out a week later or 2 weeks later that nothing has happened. It's around who has actually taken responsibility at that moment to get things done and being really clear about that.
And that clarity is a really important thing because if we're not clear on what it is, when it's due, and who's responsible for it, then you get this thing of things just stall and no one actually takes the action.
Second thing is being answerable for your actions and those of the people you lead. So that's really saying not only do I take responsibility, but the buck stops here. I'm the person that's going to take responsibility for that and be answerable to that outcome.
And it's one of the joys of leadership in that we need to run, I guess you can say, run shotgun for our team and protect them from the stuff. And particularly when you're in my experience in corporate, There's a lot of that goes on where the leaders are there to make sure that we shield the team from a lot of the noise so that they can actually get in and do the job and do the work.
Okay. The next one is owning your decisions or lack of them. So, as leaders, we're often called on to make a lot of decisions. Sorry, just going to let somebody else in. We're asked to make decisions, and often we can get caught in a decision paralysis. So, the decisions seem so big or challenging, and or everybody in the room has a different opinion, and every time you go outside of the room there's a different opinion, so we can not make decisions when we need to, and that but it's also taking responsibility for that lack of decisions. We had one client we worked with, and they would spend a lot of time in their leadership meetings discussing, but not making decisions, and it was a real frustration for the rest of the team.
And of course, when you have a culture of accountability, it builds trust and respect across the team. And they compete. It's easy to talk about things, but when you walk the talk, you actually deliver on the things you talk about. And as a leader, you're providing support to the team, and you're driving that accountability and giving them support and resources that they need to deliver on their responsibilities. It really builds that level of trust and respect right across the business.
Right, both pressing buttons. So it builds trust and respect. One of the key drivers of being a great leader and being a role model with your team is that you're trusted and respected. And that really comes down to, when you boil all things down, is that you do what you say you're going to do, and or your people, if we're looking at accountability in other people, do what they say they're going to do. And it doesn't mean you always have to do everything that you originally committed to, because we often commit to things and new priorities come in, or we just can't get it done in the time we thought. But it's having those conversations to explain why things have blown out, and just not hiding it, which is what really erodes trust and respect.
And then, of course, once you do all that, it increases engagement and alignment across the team. So people feel more a part of what's going on. They understand their purpose in the business and in what they're doing, and how their responsibilities tie into the bigger picture across the business. Everyone starts to be aligned to driving at the same outcome. So many businesses we see where alignment is out of kilter. There's a lot of misalignment, people pulling and stretching in different directions and doing things that aren't necessarily going to deliver on those more strategic high level goals and outcomes. So when you've got good accountability, there is better engagement. Everyone seems to be aligned for driving at the same things. So you get much better, more productive outcomes.
So, what are the warning signs to look for in terms of, have I got a problem personally with accountability, or is there a problem with accountability within my team or business?
So when you've got a lack of clarity, if it's unclear who owns something, who is responsible for something, it makes it really hard to hold people accountable. One of the things that when I'm working with clients, one of the things I insist on, and it's not always something that some businesses aren't real keen on it, but I insist on it. For any goal activity, there is one owner, because that way it is not shared. Because as soon as you put more than one person responsible, you start to get this finger pointing, or the potential for finger pointing. It's like, I thought you had it. No, I thought you had it. So it's always making sure that it is very clear who owns the outcome, who has overall responsibility to make sure it gets done. Doesn't mean they're doing all the work, but it's clear who has overall responsibility to drive the outcome.
The next one is a lack of follow through. So if you're seeing that you're having good conversations, people are seeming to know who owns the outcome, they're saying, yes, that's mine, or that's my team's, we'll go and do that. But then things don't actually happen. That's a warning sign of a low accountability organization.
And another warning sign that goes very closely with that is, projects and initiatives or tasks stall. They're often late. They don't get delivered to the quality or the expectations of what you want to see, because there is that lack of accountability. There's no check-ins. People are just floating along. They get driven by all these external forces. Sometimes it's whoever calls out loudest gets the attention. The squeaky wheel gets the attention, so to speak. So it's making sure that you've got that accountability to make sure people are focusing on the right things.
The next one we see a lot is scrambling and heroics. So people kind of at the last minute leaping in and saving the day when they maybe have failed to plan or prepare in advance, and seeming to be kind of the knight in shining armor, and they get a lot of attention. And it can be a real problem because not only does it mean that there's a lot of stress over the times when things are due, but that person does also tend to burn out over time if they're the one that has to keep fixing things up.
And one of the things to be careful of for individuals as well is if you're in a business where there is a lot of external pressure, we tend to be driven by that external pressure. And I've suffered from this myself when I first started working for myself. When you haven't got the external pressure, it can be sometimes difficult to find the motivation to do things ahead of time. So what tends to happen, we leave things and leave things and leave things until the pressure builds and then it forces us to do it. The thing to remember is when we're under stress, our brain doesn't operate at full capacity. The capability of our brain starts to lower the higher the stress level. So making sure that you're organizing things ahead of time and getting the right things done ahead of time can enable you to get a better quality of result and lower the stress levels.
And then the other thing to watch out for is this low trust and credibility that I was talking about before. It's a clear sign that accountability is low if you have low trust and people don't believe that things are going to happen. It's kind of a negative view when new initiatives are pulled out and said we're going to do this. Everyone like rolls their eyes and it's just not going to happen.
And trust, when we talk about trust, it's probably the most important thing to have a really good culture in your business. So making sure that you're doing all the right things to build trust is, dare I say it, one of the most important things you can do.
So another thing that can happen is we often think if I've got these problems in my business, I will hold people to account and I'll just, as the old expression used to go, I'll hold their feet to the fire and make sure things actually happen. But if you're doing it in the wrong way, then it can backfire. So one of them is that accountability, if it's always top down. So if it's always people at the top saying, this needs to be done, so and so go and do it, without working out what the impact is on that person or people or team, it can feel a lot more like control than empowerment. You're not actually saying, this is the outcome we need, go away and do it. It's like, no, go and do this the way we say when we say.
And another thing around, if it backfires, if it's just that one person, whether it's a senior person or if it's not everyone driving each other, then it can really backfire. And what goes with that is, making sure if people haven't got the right support and the right resources they need to deliver on the outcomes or their responsibilities, you're setting them up for failure. And Anna and I have both been in positions where it feels like that because we haven't felt that we've had the right support, we've got the right budget or the right tools or the right people. How can we deliver an outcome if we don't have all the right things in place that allows us to actually deliver a successful outcome?
And I see it, in some businesses we work with now, some of the, especially things like tradie businesses, is that, if they haven't set out knowing that they've got the right stuff in the van, they haven't, that prep hasn't been done or they haven't got the support behind them to make sure that everything is lined up, they're going to fail. They're going to have to go to a supplier. They're going to have to reschedule. So it's really around, you can't hold people accountable if you haven't built those processes in the background to make sure that they can achieve what they need to achieve.
And there's been a couple of clients that we've worked with where they had this perception that accountability means you've got to have a big stick to hit people with, so to speak. But if you use accountability in the wrong way, it can backfire in that people start to get very defensive and they'll start diverting and they'll start making excuses and pointing out all the reasons why they couldn't deliver rather than providing the support to ensure they can. So it feels, from a receiver's point of view, it feels more like I'm being blamed for everything rather than getting support to help me deliver the outcomes that are assigned to me.
And if the goals, before we even start, you set the goals that they're unclear or unrealistic, it's really unfair to the accountable person before they even start. So I had an example of this, many times working on projects. You'd get a project handed to you and it'd be like, you need to deliver this in 6 months with this amount of budget, and you haven't even scoped it yet. You don't even know what it is you're delivering, yet you've been given a timeline and a budget. So it's those kind of things when you're talking about projects, when you're talking about day to day, it's really making sure that you've been very clear about what is required so that people don't take it away and think, oh, I've just been handed a dud. And I'm not really going to put a lot of time, energy, and effort into it because I already know that it's not going to be successful.
It's funny on this one. I remember a time we were in a project, the start of a project meeting, and it was a lot of project people, and there was a few people that were sales that weren't project related. And there was one guy who jumped up and said, "Look, I'm not the expert on projects, but the way I see it, you set the date and then you work back from there." And all the project people in the room like, "No, it's exactly the opposite." Often, and as Anna said, you get set a date, but you've actually got to work out what's realistic, whether it's a big project or it's just a small task. It's making sure that people have the capacity, the capability, and the support to work through what's really required to deliver this. What's a realistic time frame? It might be challenging, but it needs to be realistic so that they can actually feel like they're being set up to be successful.
Sorry, it's just clicked off. Click the next one on.
So we've got someone else who's just joined.
Okay, so if we know those are all the challenges, how do we as leaders start to work through it? Okay, well, what are the things I need to put in place and how do I make this accountability work for all of us? So one of the key things, I love this quote from Brene Brown. If you know Brene and her work, you'll understand where it comes from. If not, she's definitely worth having a look at. She's a research-based writer. And she looks at how humans respond to various stresses and how to help people move through in a kind and clear way. So we thought it was a good quote in terms of when you're holding people to account, you need absolute clarity. Everybody needs to know exactly what's going on. And if you're not being clear, it's actually quite an unkind way to run your team and business.
Now, we could talk about this point for the whole session because it is about communication. And and something to remember, just because it's clear in your mind doesn't mean it's clear to the other person. The secret to communication is making sure that the intended message is understood. So, a good way to approach it, explain what needs to be done, make sure they're clear by asking questions to check in to make sure that they've got the intended message and they have absolute clarity around what's expected, what they need to be doing, what are the resources, what's the time frame, all of that sort of stuff. It's one of those really important communication things to make sure that just because you think it's clear, understanding that they understand it is clear as well.
So the first thing is kind of like the umbrella view of what needs to be in place to before you even start thinking about holding people accountable. And the first one is that you need to have clear agreement and guidance on what the most important things are. So that's like if you've done your strategic planning, you know what's important for the next 6, 12 months. And you also understand how all the different functions, how all the different operations align in with that, and that everybody has a level of understanding. Obviously, not everybody needs every bit of detail, but does each person understand how they fit into that big picture?
And one of the things we do when working with businesses on developing their planning is making sure that you've got the high level goals and objectives, but each of the functional areas have goals that feed into that to achieve those higher level things. And that's where you get that alignment from. So it's really important to have some guiding principles to drive that.
And some examples of guiding principles to just give you some clarity on what those look like. Where Macquarie, when I worked there, had a great guiding principle, which it was also a value, but it was freedom within boundaries. So as long as you knew the boundary of your role and the boundary of your responsibility, there was a reasonable amount of freedom for you to make decisions, make mistakes if you needed to. But it was a really great guiding principle. Another one that we hear often is one team. With NBN, that was a really distinct guiding principle whereby it was sort of drilled in and made a core principle of not doing anything in your area that would impact adversely anyone in other areas. So, like, think about how you impact the other teams and make your decisions based on that. And there's a third one, if you're a customer focused organization, is being able to say, we have a guiding principle of customers first, which helps people further, into the organization understand that if they have to make a call, and it's about accountability and allowing them to make those decisions, they can make the call around putting the customers first. So it's having a think about what would be an appropriate guiding principle for your team or business to help people make those decisions in those crunch accountability moments.
And again, clarity is key, is making sure everyone understands what they are and how they use those within their particular roles. And then, of course, there are times when we've got our pet projects, the things that we really want to do because it's our something that we really enjoy, something we really like, or we think is going to provide benefit. And there are times when it's maybe appropriate to humanely kill them. And by that we mean don't just stop it and tell everyone that's it, we're finished, but explain why it's being stopped or parked because it's not in line with our overall objectives or we've got other priorities at this time. But sometimes because it might be a pet project, we want to keep it going. And there might be times where maybe that's not the right thing to do. So we need to actually park them or kill them completely.
The next one is exploring where your resource bottlenecks are and plan to these constraints. So if you've in your strategic plan or your team plan, you've said like these are the 5 things we want to do. These are the 5 operational priorities. But then you get to number 2 and you've already run out of people and or money. It's being able to say, okay, we're already doing 1 and 2 this time because they're bigger than we thought. And plan to the constraints or go and hire more people or buy more widgets or whatever it is you need to do that's causing the bottleneck, but be really clear about where those constraints are, because if you're trying to hold people to account for project 5, 6, 7, yet they can't get resources, either people or physical resources, then you've set them up to fail.
And then, of course, it's making sure we advise where functions or people within functional areas can make their own operational calls. What are the boundaries for them so that they can make calls where they need to without having to run it up the flagpole and make sure that they've got support from above. They understand that in this area, to this level of decision, I can just go and make that and make the call and drive things forward. As long as they understand that they're aligned with those overall strategic priorities and strategic goals.
Then, once you've got that framework in place and everybody understands their component of it, it's around being clear on the purpose of the specific activity, task, or role of the person in front of you. What is their contribution into that strategic plan?
Yeah, how does that fit within the overall goals and objectives? And agree the outcome. What's expected? What are the standards? What's the quality? Ideally, or preferably, you can use KPIs for this sort of thing to make sure it's very clear, but ensure that their goals and their challenges are, or their expectations are challenging but realistic. There's nothing worse than having something that's challenging to the point where we start off right from the start, we don't feel we can actually achieve it.
And the reason that agree is underlined is because both people need to come out of that conversation with a common understanding of what it is that each is accountable for.
And then it's a case of adjusting your leadership style, your communication style to suit the situation, the person or the team that you're dealing with so that everyone is on the same page. You've got that clarity and everyone's driving towards that same outcome.
And that the situation could be that they are senior people, so they need a bit less hand holding. They've got a history of being really accountable and a great delivery person, and or the opposite. Therefore, you adjust your style based on that, and or what attitude they come with. That they got an attitude of they walk the talk, they do what they say they're going to do. In which case, you would back off a little. If all those 3 are ticks, these are great people. We maybe check in a bit less, whereas if we have doubts, we check in a lot more frequently.
And clearly, the level of experience for the person in whatever they're doing comes into that as well. If they're less experienced, they'll need a bit more support. If they're more experienced, they might need a little less support. And then it's important to discuss how they're going to manage issues and risks. And as a team, it's ideally, to formalize that so that you've got a framework around how all those things are managed. And when you've got a really good culture, people feel safe to call out those things really early. So it maximizes the amount of time you've got to deal with them and take corrective action where needed.
And then agree. Again, agree is the key word, the frequency and content of when you're going to check in and have those one-on-ones so that you can make sure that you're discussing any issues or risks and helping them stay on track and giving them the emotional support that they might need through the process. Sometimes people have a great history of delivery and then something's happening in their personal lives and it just drops away, and being able to understand what's going on with them can help you to maybe adjust the level of expectation on that person to support them through what they're going through.
Something we have come across in a couple of areas as well. There are some people who will see accountability as micromanagement. And it depends on, it can be seen, it can be that. It depends on how you implement your accountability process. But one thing is some people who don't want to be kept accountable, who want to be able to do whatever they like and don't want to be held to, deliver on their responsibilities, will see accountability as micromanagement, when in actual fact, it's actually setting the standard of outcomes and behaviors that you want to see and making sure you're communicating that very clearly, that the reason that you're having these one-to-ones is to drive outcomes and make sure they've got the support and everything they need to deliver on their responsibilities.
And then the third piece, because we want to have accountability, but we also want to have a empathetic and supportive culture, is to make sure that as a leader, you are supporting and encouraging people. So being available as a safe sounding board. Um, and that is really, being accountable can be quite stressful because you've got to drive through a lot of issues to get to the place where you want to be. Generally, if you want to make sure that you've done all your tasks every day, you're pushing other people, you're pushing resources, you're working with suppliers, all those things that we all do. So being a safe space for people to let off steam can be really helpful. And it's also, again, balancing that frequency of how often you need to do that with the level of risk with the person and the tasks involved.
And the old adage that you can't manage what you don't measure is very true. So making sure that you've got some mechanism to manage and to measure progress, to measure output, to measure the outcomes so that you can actually manage against that. If you don't have good tools around reporting or tracking, it's very hard to manage progress. So making sure you've got something in place with those regular check-ins to ensure that you can manage the progress, you understand where the issues are, you're providing the support that is required so that people can actually keep progressing with their responsibilities.
One of the things we hear quite a lot in this space is this is when the micromanagement can kick in. Is like, do I have to do a reporting every week, etc. But the research shows that humans are never happier than when we're solving problems and making progress. But we're terrible at actually recognizing when we have made progress. We're only looking for the next thing we need to solve. So if you can get some discipline around getting those reports in, it's a great opportunity as a leader to look back across the week or the month or whatever period we're looking at and saying, I know there's all these extra things we've got to do, but look at where we've come from. Look at the progress we've already made. This is great. And it can just really help lift people and give them a bit more energy to keep going and remain accountable because you're seeing progress.
And that's a big part of using coaching and mentoring skills to uplift resourcefulness and confidence and giving people really positive feedback. And feedback is always a positive thing in my eyes. You're either going to give them some feedback on things they're doing well, or you're going to give them some feedback on an area where they can improve and be more beneficial, more confident, more successful. So make sure you're recognizing all the little things as well as the big things and giving everyone the support they need and using your skills and experience to help them improve.
And then making sure that you're providing support in removing roadblocks when necessary and absorbing some of that risk. So what I mean by absorbing some of that risk is sometimes you need to run interference, as we might call it, in terms of there's lots of demands coming from different directions. It's being able to put yourself in the middle and kind of allow the people to actually deliver while you work out, other people demanding, resources or time or energy from the team. It's you're trying to manage some of that.
And then sometimes, providing that support means we need to sort of show some tough love and have those difficult conversations around making sure that people understand that maybe the performance isn't up to speed, and providing that support to help them deliver better performance, deliver to their outcomes so that you get the results that you're looking for.
So we haven't held ourselves accountable and keeping to time. We've just got one more slide, and then we'll have some questions. So this is around the leadership actions that foster accountability.
So think about this for yourselves and the people in your businesses. Are you the Teflon leader where everything just washes off because I'm not taking responsibility for anything? Or are you the type of person that assumes responsibility for the things, not only that are for yourself, but also for your team?
Are you allowing things to drift? It's quite tempting because we're stressed and there's loads of things going on and we're already tired, etc., etc. It was just like today, I'm going to let things drift. I'm not going to follow that up. Or are you acting with a sense of urgency as appropriate for the needs of the business?
Do you have good standards? Are you just one that sort of lets standards fly and they are where they are whenever day, how are you feeling? Or are you someone who sets clear standards of performance, of accountability, of behavior that are the standards that you want to see across the business?
Are you not across progress? Do you've got a broad awareness of what's happening, but not really clear? Or are you really on top of what progress is being made and how things are happening?
And of course, then are you someone who finger points and blames? Or are you a person who provides balanced feedback to ensure that we're clear on not what the symptom is, but diving in to understand the cause of delays and misalignment or whatever it is, so that you can actually deal with the cause and address it effectively rather than just dealing with a symptom and blaming someone.
So that is our whistle stop tour of accountability. Obviously, with all these things, leadership is a huge topic, and we usually spend between 2 and 4 hours on accountability if we're working in a deep dive with a team. So here's some of the key takeaways.
So the first one, being aware of the warning signs of low accountability. Is there unclear ownership, lack of follow through? Do you have the heroes coming in at the last minute to save the day? Or is there a lack of trust across the team because things aren't being delivered when they should be, and there's that you've got that lack of accountability?
Ensure you regularly communicate the agreed, again, can't emphasize enough, agreed, clear, strategic, and operational priorities.
And provide support and encouragement to your team, including taking your share of accountability and making sure there's plenty of recognition around all the little things as well as the big things that are achieved. So that brings us to the end of our talking to you. Open it up for questions. Given we've got quite a number of people on this, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions out there.
Hang on.
Anna's pointing at something.
We can see everyone.
All right. Does anyone have any questions you'd like to ask? If you do have one,
Jonathan?
Jonathan?
Yeah, Craig, Anna, thanks for that. I have a question which is, I don't think there's a definitive answer, but I want your opinion. When you're in, if I set a scenario, you've got a group, you've got your team, and you've got a project. You might have agreed and set your accountabilities, who's responsible for what and when. And if one, and okay, it can be any of the team, might be dropping the ball or not holding up their piece, which obviously affects the whole team. What is your thoughts on it? When is it appropriate to pull somebody up within the group scenario versus when you might pull somebody up one-on-one, as separate from the group?
So the way I would think about it is if having that conversation in the group can help support that person solve the problem, then that can be quite useful. So, for example, if somebody says, "Oh, I haven't done it because," and they've got a list of excuses, is being able to say, "Okay, who did you speak to get, who have you spoken to about this? What have you tried?" So that you can see, have they thought through everything? Is there anyone else in the room who can help move that forward? But you're not kind of assigning blame at that moment. You're just kind of trying to understand what it is they've done, not done, and where it's fallen down. And then I'd say have that, if you kind of get to the point where they just haven't done it, it's like, let's talk about this outside of the meeting and see
Yeah.
what we can do.
And part of that too, as I mentioned earlier, making sure you understand the cause, not just the effect. The effect is they haven't delivered something, or it's late, or something's been missed. But why? What is the reason for that happening? And that sometimes can come out in the group discussion if you're doing a project update, and suddenly it comes out they haven't done something. You can ask some questions there, but then maybe you need to, take them aside for a one-on-one to really understand what the cause is, because it could be conflict within the team, and maybe they're not comfortable to call that out in the group session. So it's a judgment call sometimes, and understanding what your people are like. But the key thing for me is delve in to find the cause so you can actually deal with that and then improve the situation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
an
That was
interesting
helpful.
thing is that when we ask the question why, when it's human emotions involved, it can feel quite accusing. So if we say something like, "Why haven't you delivered that in an open meeting?" it would create defensiveness in someone. But if you said something like, "What can we do to help you move it forward?" which is, essentially the same
Yeah.
question, but just done in a more supportive way, it's just a really great option. So if you're using your coaching skills as a leader, asking what, how, when type questions can be a lot gentler than just
Why didn't you do it?
why hasn't it happened? It's like, what is preventing us moving forward, or what is blocking you, can be a gentler way to allow them to open up.
Does that
Yeah,
help,
thank
Jonathan?
you for that.
So we've got a question from Leonie. What's the best way to start a project so that any conversation regarding progress, accountability is not taken as blame, phrasing, values, etc.? So some people, there's a minority of people who always try and see, or may see things as blame, because maybe that's where they've come from and they've been in a blame environment. But if you're always talking about the purpose of what's going on and the purpose of why things are happening in terms of driving accountability, and how it's there to support people, to help them be more successful, to help them achieve the outcomes that we're working towards, that can be a big benefit to everyone to understand why you're doing things. Purpose in our role, in the little things that we're doing and how that fills in with the bigger picture, can be really important. And if there's an individual that is still seeing it as blame, it's probably, coming back to the previous point, pull them aside, have the one-to-one where you're giving them some coaching and mentoring around what's going on. You want to support them, and talking about them, individually, or talking to them individually around what you're trying to achieve. It's not about blame. It's not about making people feel bad. It's about making sure they've got the support that they need, and we're all clear on what's going on and how it fits in together.
I think it comes down to, are you working in a trustworthy environment? So have you created a trustworthy culture? And I know I say culture funny to the Aussies. So it's having a think about, where is there a lack of trust, because that tends to shift into that blame, and defensiveness is, if people don't feel safe, they'll set things up so that they are defending their position rather than collectively working together to work out how we improve and how we move forward. But it's very hard to do that if you feel unsafe. You're going to have that defensiveness up before you even start. So it's really building a trustworthy culture, which is a whole other discussion, but one we love to have. So if you do want to have that conversation, just give us a shout. We're happy to talk through that, because it's the fundamental piece. It's kind of like there's this combination of having the strategy set, but then it being a safe place to deliver that. You've got to kind of have those two in lockstep.
Any other questions? All quiet? Well, we have
Right on time.
So thank you, everyone. Our details are on the screen now, so feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. Follow our company page, follow Anna or myself. If anyone would like to talk further, or you need some support in your businesses around how to drive accountability or leadership or any of that sort of stuff, feel free to contact us. Always happy to have an obligation-free chat, and we'll help out. And if we can help out in more wider ways, then we're happy to do that as well. So thank you for attending. I hope you got something out of that. And in about 3 months' time, sort of November-ish, we'll be doing the next one in our quarterly leadership download.
We also put this on
YouTube
as well. We'll send the link out so that you can, if there's any bits you wanted to rewatch or understand a bit more, then we'll send that out to everyone.
Yep. So thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.